All right, hello. Welcome to the Modern Thought Room. My name is Jethro, and this episode is the fifth episode in a series of five episodes on conversation and why I think that's one of those skills that is overlooked and something that when we take the time to focus on intentionally is something that can make a difference. Specifically, improving how we show up in conversation can ultimately help us show up as intended more often. And the more often we show up as intended, the more we reach our potential. And from there, the more we even expand our potential and capacities to do things, right? So, our definition of conversation is a conversation is an interactive, informal exchange of thoughts, ideas, or feelings between two or more people. So, once again, a conversation is is a interactive, informal exchange of thoughts, ideas, or feelings between two or more people. Right. And again, the goal is that improving how we have conversation and how we show up in conversation is one of the ways or a skill that we can improve that will ultimately help us show up as intended in more situations. And when we show up as intended consistently, it makes it easier for us to reach our potential, not only reach our potential, but then expand our potential and achieve much more. Right. So, over these five episodes, I've kind of just used the definition itself as the framework, and I say this in a good amount of the episodes that if you ever need a framework, use the definition of a word. If you get nothing else from this, do that. You ever need a framework, the definition of a word is a framework that will give you a much needed, succinct roadmap. Right? So conversation is the skill that I've talked about over these couple of episodes, and it's something that I think we all don't necessarily learn how to do, um, but it's something that we develop the ability to do, right? So this we don't. Most of us do not take classes on conversation. Most of us do not sit and analyze our conversational ability. At some point, some of us may say, "Hmm," or maybe somebody might point to us and kind of nudge us and encourage us to become more conversationalists, or that's not the right term, but yeah, yeah. More conversationally adept. Da, da, da. Yeah, more become conversationalists, right? Sometimes people might not just like, hey, um, you can do a little bit better there in that area, right? And one of the main things, the main reason why we ever even look at certain skills is because as we are growing, as we're developing, and as we're trying to meet our potential and even go beyond that, um, there are skills that inhibit especially when we aren't performing well in those skills, they inhibit our ability to show up as intended. And what do I mean by show up as intended? Showing up as intended is the vision in your mind of what you know and believe you can do, right? Showing up intended, and the intended part is what capacity and what ability and what circumstance and what landscape, what you envision in your mind about how you can show up. That's the intended. So every time you fall short of that, that is falling short. Every time you fall short of that, it sucks though. It sucks. It sucks. It is no bueno to see what you can do and have a vision for how you can show up and continually fall short of that. It is a painful experience, right? It's something I know. It's something I know, right? So conversation is one of those skills that over these episodes that I've wanted to focus on because it's one of them that we have a more up to the minute measure of how we're doing, and we have the feedback. Why? Because we're talking, it's about talking, communicating with another person, and based on how the conversation is going, you will be getting feedback, right? You will be getting feedback. You may get literal direct immediate feedback, you may get indirect nonverbal feedback, but you're getting some feedback, and it's something that we do daily. So there isn't I had a bad conversation 2 weeks ago. I need to wait 2 more weeks before I get another conversation to prove myself. No, That's not the case. All right. You have a conversation today, you're going to have conversations later, you're going to have conversations tomorrow. And each one is another opportunity for you to show up, for you to practice showing up as you know you can. And each moment gives you an opportunity to build that confidence. The more you show up as you know you can, the more confidence you get and the more ability you believe that you have. That then allows you to expand your horizon as to what you believe is attainable, achievable with your skill set and ability. And once you start getting those wins and getting those achievements, you'll then start seeing more that you can accomplish and contribute and the impact that you could ultimately have. And the conversation is not the only skill that you can kind of lock in and kind of build up in this kind of um, grander way. There are many others, but right now we're just focusing on conversations, right? So showing up in a conversation is a way you can start working on how you ultimately show up in moments and making sure that you show up as intended, right? It's something that we all need to put a focus on, put attention to. You know, it's something that we can take for granted because again, some of us like talking, some of us don't like talking, some of us feel like it's a waste of time, some of us feel like it's a burden, some of us feel like this is the main event. Some people are very good talkers and the main event is a conversation with you. And so that's their main event, is a conversation with you. And that's all right, that's all right, because we're all different in that way, that there's something different that for each of us kind of brings joy to us and fulfillment. But all of us, because we live in a society, and a society is built on relationships, relationships are built on communication and experiences, and conversations are part of that. We need to be able to use these conversations to grow, to develop, and to keep getting better. Conversation shouldn't be solely just about information's being exchanged, a hottie ha ha laugh. Conversations are opportunities for you to really fine tune ideas, fine tune thoughts, fine tune expressions of feeling, right? So in the conversation, you have all these things that can be done and can be getting worked up and can be getting built up, that when you just phone in a conversation or you check out in a conversation or you don't take courage to step up and share your perspective, share your opinion, then you leave a burden on whoever else is in that conversation, and you limit the collective benefit of the diversity of voices, right? So everyone has a different perspective and opinion, loosely speaking. And so when we come together in conversation, that's when we're able to exchange information. So before, you know, when communication wasn't as readily available as it is today, in terms of social media, cell phones, texting, calls, and all these things, sometimes it wasn't until people met and physically sat down to talk that a lot of information was shared and transferred, right? That's how information went from coast to coast, sometimes many times back, and that's a back. And even still today, it's still the same principle, right? It just happens at a much faster speed. So you might have an idea, you might have a series of thoughts that haven't even formed into idea that necessarily addresses anything, and talking to somebody about that might be the way that you fine tune it to get to that innovation that then helps you produce a service, produce an offering, or what have you, right? Or solve a critical problem. And not being able to work up to a place where you can kind of hash that out in conversation is a detriment. It's a detriment and it's unfortunate. And it's also partly unfortunate because you might not have somebody that is willing to engage with you in conversation over a period of time to see your idea, your thought come to life. And that's why it's important for folks to realize, right? When you come across somebody that you feel in a way uplifts you, encourages you, builds you up, somebody that makes you feel seen, makes you feel heard, challenges your ideas, asks you to think deeper, asks you to, the people that you run into that you've left a conversation with them and felt like, man, I gained something, man, I got a value from this interaction, right? That's not just like, they're not just haphazardly doing, sometimes they might be, but for the most part they're not haphazardly doing these things, right? They're not haphazardly showing up for you, right? They're showing up for you with an intention of what it means to have a conversation with you, in the fact that you're a human being. So you come with a complexity of emotions, you come with a complexity of perspectives, and at the same time, this conversation, this back and forth, is about exchanging some of our thoughts, ideas, and feelings, right? And so, because of that, let's govern how we go back and forth, right? Let's govern what what you give, what I give, what I get, what you get, what the return is, right? What the value is of this exchange, right? And that keeps these things like front and center, and allows us to approach conversation in a principled manner. So all of this is about, in any type of skills acquisition, knowledge acquisition, anything that you're learning, the fundamental root benefit of it is to gain a principle that you can manipulate in a circumstance, or a circumstance that you can manipulate based on a principle. And that's the difference between just like randomly learning something and not necessarily seeing the benefit of it, versus truly learning something where you have a principle in hand, so that when the situation is different, you don't, feel out of place. So I think this is, for me, this is one of the I think one of the, like, the hallmark moments. They're not hallmark moments. This is one of the, like, quintessential versions of this, right? Um, it's like you don't know how to do a certain math equation or math problem, right? And you maybe use a calculator and get the answer, right? Or maybe you copied on somebody's sheet. They said, "Oh, this is the answer." Now your professor, your teacher, your instructor, they deliberately give you a different look. Think, boom, this game's about football, right? You're watching film. Every every fourth and every that's the fourth and one. Every every second and five, you see the defense as showing up in one particular way. This is what this opposition defense does every second and five, right? But you overlook the principle of where we are on the field supersedes the down sometimes. Where we are on the field supersedes the down sometimes, right? And so what happens is, you're in a game, you're in a situation where it's a second and five, but the context is slightly different, and the defense intentionally disguises their coverage, and now you throw an interception, you take a sack for a loss, you hand the ball off to the running back, he loses yards. There's some type of misunderstanding of how things were set up. Why? Because the principle wasn't respected of, okay, yes, we're in a second down and five, but we're at a different place on the field, and therefore I need to adhere to a different principle that will then guide me to how I should make a decision in this moment. And that's, anytime you're picking up anything that you're learning. Same thing with this conversation piece, is that what you're getting is a reminder to tune into the principle, so that now you have a starting point, a vertex that you can kind of pivot based on context, and you're always given a roadmap to how you then break things down, and you kind of move yourself forward, right? So the sort of so I'm trying not. I was about to use a cliche, and I call. Yeah, I'm gonna say it as this is a call to action. The call to action is for you to now start to think more intentionally about how you show up in conversations, start making some adjustments, start giving, you know, time to just making some tweaks to how you show up in conversation, putting in some effort, making some changes, right? And then ultimately using that as a springboard to also showing up in situations as you intend. And watch, if you consistently show up in situations as you intend, you will see your potential go from where it is now to much further, as also your ability improves. So again, as always, thank you guys for your time. Appreciate you guys. Take care. Adios. Ciao, ciao.